some reason I always get up here when I'm talking about this spinnaker, because I love being on the foredeck. It is so freaking fun. So I get up here. When we want to deploy the spinnaker, there's going to be some steps involved. Right now we're on a port tack. We'll be on a starboard tack when we deploy the spinnaker, because in a race you beat upwind and then you round the windward mark on your port side and you come down, and the wind is now, like if the wind's coming from that direction, we're beating up and this is the windward mark, you come along on a starboard tack, you round this, you're still on a starboard tack because the wind's from there, you're still on a starboard tack, so your sails are all on the port side of the boat, and you head off this way, and then once you've got the spin deployed, you can head straight downwind to the finish line. Or maybe you jibe, whatever. But anyway, you're on a starboard tack. The point is, when you deploy the spin, you're on a starboard tack, so the main sail is over here and the jib is over here. And that's great because your spinnaker is going to come out this way, and it's going to go out here, and it's going to be blanketed by the jib. It's going to be leeward of the jib. It's not going to catch any wind. It's just going to be nice and calm, and there's no air on it, which is fantastic because you don't want it to fill with air before you're ready for it to fill with air. So you've got it behind the jib, and you're in control of when it's going to fill with air. It's not going to fill with air as you're putting it out there, and then when we hoist it and get it out front, then it fills with air on our command, right? So we want to control the boat. So what we'll do to deploy the jib is, to deploy the spinnaker, is we'll pre-feed it. Pre-feeding means the person on this side, in this case Max, will grab a hold of his line and start pulling it in. When he pulls that line, which is attached to here, his line will go backwards, and this line will go forwards, and this cleat that is attached to will travel forwards out here, outside of the jib. The jib is going to be right here, and this is outside of the jib, because notice where it is. It's already outside the jib, right? Mm-hmm. It's already outside the jib. So if I'm the jib and I just come over here, I'm the jib, this thing is outside of me, and that's great. And so as he pulls it forward, that clue will go outside the jib, all the way forward, until it pokes its little head, its little nose in front of the forestay. When you can see the nose come around the edge of the forestay, that's when you stop pre-feeding it. Because that's as far as we can go without catching the wind. If you go any further, then the spinnaker is around on the windward side of the jib. It's starting to catch wind, and we don't want it to catch wind just yet. So the whole foot of the spinnaker is lined up out there beside the jib. We do that as we're approaching the mark. So we're racing. I should backstep a second here. We're racing, and here's the mark, the windward mark, and the wind's coming straight at me, and we're coming up on a starboard tack. We're on what's called the lay line. The lay line is a line where if you stay on this tack, you will make the mark. You're not going to have to tack again. So if we're coming up like this, you're not going to make the mark. You're going to have to tack, and then tack again. Tacking when the spin pole is up there is impossible because the pole is dead in the way of the jib. So you don't deploy the pole until you're on the lay line, and the lay line is defined as we don't have to tack again. So yeah, that's what it is. It's pretty straightforward. So we're on the lay line, and at some point the person on the tiller is going to say, we're made. And we go, all right, great, we're not going to have to tack again? And he says, yeah, that's what I just said, we're made. But anyway, so we head up here. When he says we're made, and we're still, like 5-10 boat lengths away from the thing, the foredeck person will climb up on this side, because that'll be the upwind side, because we're on a starboard tack, so the boat is like this, and it's more fun to go on the upwind side of the boat when you're traveling. It's easier to catch yourself before you hit the water if you lose your footing. So the foredeck person will go up. We'll set up the that might be me. I'll go up. I will set up the pole. I'll set up the pole, and by putting it into this cleat, into the mast ring, and it'll be out here. And I will ask you to, I'll say pole up. There's a couple of lines here that you're going to be interested in: the topping left and the pole down haul. Sometimes they have different labels, but that's basically, this is pole up and this is pole down. And I'll just say pole up and pole down. I won't say top, because I never remember that. Anyway, I'll lift the pole myself, but I can't hold it there forever. So I'll say pole up, and you'll pull up. We want the pole to be parallel to the water, which is often parallel to the deck and often perpendicular to the mast, but not always. We want it to be perpendicular to the water. So I will get that pole up so it's perpendicular to the water, and they'll say, that's good, cleat it. And so then you pull this in, and then you cleat it off, and now the pole can't fall. It's just sitting up there in the air nicely. And then that happens before the pre-feed. And then the pre-feed comes along, and then we'll round the mark. We do all of that before we round the mark. As we round the mark, now we're going to hoist it. So here's the spinnaker halyard. I will first take off this little Velcro thing, cheek piece, and then I'll hoist this. And as I'm hoisting it, by just hiking this down, right, Max will be tailing it. He'll be tailing this, because when I hoist it, a lot of this will end up in a pile right here, and that's no fun. So he will be tailing this in, and I'll do that until it gets to the top. And when it gets to the top, I'll say made, that means we're at the top, and then I'll cleat this off myself, because at that point, you guys are gonna be overtaxed. A whole lot of stuff has to happen here. You need to furl the jib, because we're no longer using the jib, we're using the spinnaker and the main. So you will furl the jib, and I'll be yelling at you, pull back. Someone will say, furl the jib, you're on that, and pull back is you. You're gonna pull this sheet in until the pole comes back. The pole is gonna wanna be perpendicular to the wind. You can find the wind direction, obviously, using the wind vane up there. Another way of finding the wind direction is the boom should also be perpendicular to the wind. And so, you know, the person at the tiller who's on the main sheet will probably have this perpendicular to the wind. So one thing you can do is just put your pole parallel as an extension of this, you know, just boom, and then you're done. But sometimes this isn't exactly where you want it, so you should really just check that wind vane and make sure you're perpendicular to the wind. The wind vane will switch around, and you can't have it constantly perpendicular to the wind, so you're not going to be moving it all the time. You know, if the wind vane is going like this, then perpendicular is here. If the wind vane is going like this, then perpendicular is here. You know, you get it. So you are furling the jib, you are doing pull back, and then once that pole is back to where it wants to be, you will cleat it, and so we're good there. And then you are flying the jib at this point. And so as soon, and I'm already telling you to fly the jib, to fly the spin before you're done furling. And sorry, that's just the way it is. So furl it quick. And then I'm like, you're flying the spinnaker. And by flying the spinnaker, what I really mean is, the spinnaker, again, is this huge parachute out there, right? And the wind's coming from over there, and the pole is holding the upwind part out. And then, and so the line that goes from the mast to the edge of the pole is stiff by virtue of the pole holding it there, right? You see what I'm saying? But this line over here, this clue over on this side, is just floating in the air downwind, and it's free to move around as it pleases, and it's gonna misbehave. And your job is to get it to behave. So you will pull in and release your line as you see the shoulder, which is the top part of the spin, start to luff or straighten out. So if the shoulder luffs in, like this is the whole spinnaker, as it luffs in like that, you tighten, and then it straightens out. And then when it's straight, you loosen, and eventually it'll luff again. And then you tighten, and you're making small adjustments constantly, continuously. You are dialed in, you're having unwavering attention. And if someone says to you to do something else, you say, no, I'm flying the spinnaker. I'm already overtasked. So you are just pulling and releasing, keeping that thing doing kind of a queen's wave. A little bit of luffing is fine. A big luff, you need to pull it in a big to go. I'm sorry, what was that?
Just to confirm, he's looking at which edge of the spinnaker? The edge on this side or the edge on this side?
I always get confused by that question. It's the edge that he can't see.
That's right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if he's supposed to do that, how does he see that edge that he can't see?
Right, right. So in your case then it would be this edge, because that's the edge that you're gonna have trouble seeing, right? So you wanna look at that edge that you can't see. You tell me, how do you look at that edge? Yeah, yeah. Well, for starters, you know what? No, it's this edge, because the mast is over here.
I mean, get confused. I figured I would just ask.
Not the mast. The main sail is over here. The main sail is over here. So anyway, you can change sides. Once it's up there, we'll figure that question out. I always get confused on that one. But you can change sides. This is a very long line. You can sit there and control it. You can also sit over there and control the same thing, right?
Right, only on this line.
That's it. That's the only line you're controlling. Yep, yep. The tweakers, the guy tweaker is going to be tight as it is, because we want to hold it down low. The sheet tweaker, and the guy is just, you know, one of these is a guy and one of them is a sheet, and that's just, you know, sailing terminology to get people confused. The guy is the one that's attached to the pole. The other one is called a sheet.
So
some people call them both sheets.
Attached to the outboard end of the pole.
Yes, yes. The inboard end of the pole is always attached to the mast.
Right.
No lines are on it. Yeah.
Right.
So the guy is attached to the pole. The sheet is the other one.
Right.
The sheet tweaker should be uncleated and free. It just is going to fly better that way. Ultimately, to really fly efficiently, you're going to want both corners both clues, I'm sorry, of the spinnaker at the same level relative to the water. So you want a nice, even shape of this thing, and you want it to be stable. And to get those at the same level, you can use your tweakers to adjust it. This one is usually tight on the guy, and this one on the sheet, you can adjust that if you need to get it to have a nice shape.
So then he's adjusting two sheets. One is the sheet, and one is the tweaker. So curling and uncurling, and then tweaker.
Yes. Yeah, the tweaker is for the height of the clue, and the curling and the sheet is for changing the curl, getting the curl to go away or to come back.
So how do I know how to adjust the tweaker?
On the guy side, it's super simple. You just have it tight.
Okay, great.
Yeah. On the sheet side, it's also super simple. You just leave it completely uncleated and it's probably gonna work just fine. Until someone's like, wait, why is that thing like all messed up? And then you make an adjustment. The downhaul, I want to talk about the downhaul briefly as well. You want the spinnaker sail to have a nice stable shape and to not really bounce around a lot. On smooth water like we have today, it's gonna be pretty stable. It's gonna be nice. If you've got big waves, then the boat's going up and down, and the pole is going up and down, and the spinnaker is going up and down, and nothing is stable. And so when you've got waves, you're gonna wanna use the downhaul to hold the pole down so it can't bounce, and that'll keep the shape of the spinnaker much more stable. So if we're in waves, we're gonna put this on and we're gonna cleat it, and that's gonna keep the pole from bouncing. The problem with having this on is you can't move the pole back and forth very easily because this guy acts as a brake. I don't know, it'll be easier to see when it's up, but when it's up, if this is on tight, and then this bridle is holding the position, you can't move the pole back. I think you can't move it back. It's one or the other you can't do anymore. So anytime I tell you to go pull back, if this is on, I have to first unhook this before you can go pull back. Or I'll say pull back and you'll be like, it's not going back, and this is where communication happens, right? You say it's not going back, and we all have to figure out why is it not going back. One reason it might not be going back is because actually these look like two different lines, but they're one line. They're one line, and they connect through the foot of the spinnaker. So your line goes all the way out to this clue, and then the tension goes across the foot of the spinnaker to your line and in here. So you're holding different ends of the same line, so you can fight each other and do a tug of war, and that can make your life kind of annoying. But you can also communicate. And so if Max is having trouble getting the pole back, you might be like, Chris, give me some slack. And you're like, Max, I've given you all the slack I can. What's going on? And then I'm like, oh, that's right, I forgot. The downhole is on. And this is where communication is crucial. We need, there's always gonna be something messing us up. So we gotta look at that. So anyway, at this point, we've hoisted the spin, we have flown the spin, and now the next step is we're gonna jibe the spin. I think we're gonna talk about, let's talk about jibing the spin. So to jibe the spin means we're gonna change directions. Instead of having the wind coming from the starboard side, we're gonna jibe so the wind's coming from the port side, which means, as you'll recall, that the pole has to attach to the upwind part of the spinnaker, or the spinnaker won't stay upwind of the boat, right? Obviously it won't stay upwind. So we're gonna have to change the pole to be on this side. To change the pole from this side to this side, that's the foredecks person job. What I'll do, I've got the pole attached to the mast ring, and I've got it attached to a cleat. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna detach it from the cleat over there, from the clue, and then I'm gonna detach it from the mast ring using this handy dandy little rope here, which we'll show you a close-up of later. And then I'm gonna just switch it like this. I don't switch it through there because it'll hit the forestay. So, does that make sense? I'll take the pole from this position to this position. And so the two ends switch. Which end is on the mast switches. So I go like this, and then, so I detach from there, I detach from the clue, and then I detach from the mast ring, and then I grab this sheet, which is kind of floating in the air out there, right? And I try and grab it, and sometimes I can just grab it, and sometimes it's way out there, and I can't grab it. And then I'm going to tell you, I can't get the sheet. And then you've got the sheet really close to you, right? The sheet comes in here, it comes closer to you than it does to me, right? Out here it's further out, and in here it's closer in. So then you'll just reach out over the railing, you grab a hold of this line, and you pull it all the way into here so that it hits the shrouds, and then it's hitting the shrouds and I can grab it really easy, right? You may or may not have to help me, but if I ask for your help, that's what you're gonna do. So then I detach from the clue, I detach from the mast ring, and I attach this end to the jaw here, and then I push it out and attach the other jaw here, and I say made. And when I say made, the person on the tiller is now free to jibe the boat because the spinnaker will be good. At this point, you're on the guy, so you're gonna pull the tweaker in tight. you're on the sheet, so you're going to unhook your tweaker, and you're going to be flying it.
I'm
and that
going to be the sheet.
You're on the
He's
sheet.
going to be the guy.
Yes, and now you are looking at that shoulder, and you're trying to fly it. And when the shoulder luffs over, so this is the spinnaker, and the wind's coming from that direction. And when that shoulder luffs over, you're going to tighten it up and straighten it out. And when it gets perfectly straight, you're going to loosen it up and allow it to luff. And you're going to keep on doing that over and over and over again. You would think, why don't I just pull it tight and leave it tight the whole time, Tom? The reason is because you can have it too tight and it'll misbehave. So you want it on the edge of luffing. That's where you want it to be. You want it to be constantly going, oh, I want to luff. And you're like, no, you can't quite luff. And then it's like, I'm not luffing. And you think, why isn't it luffing? Probably because it's too tight. So you loosen it until it luffs again. And you just constantly back and forth. So that's a gybe. If you gybe once, you have to gybe again because we're going to douse on the same side. So then we gybe again, same thing. Detach from the clue, detach from the mast, swing it over, attach to the other clue, and then attach to the mast. And now you're back on the guy and you're back on the sheet. You're flying it, everything's good. And now we're coming down to the the finish line, right? If it's a one-lap race, dousing doesn't really matter. You cross the finish line, you douse at your convenience. It really doesn't matter. If it's a two-lap race, then when you cross that finish line, you have to round and head back upwind. So you want that douse to be efficient and fast. Because if you still got the spinnaker out when you're trying to head upwind, it's the biggest break on the planet.
You go through the finish line, or do you go? You have the option to go outside the pin and then come back through.
That'll be in the racing instructions.
Okay.
Almost always, the only ones I've ever seen, you go through the spinnaker, through the finish line, and circle either end from inside to outside. Yeah, but the racing rules will have a diagram. Okay, so to douse the spinnaker, the first thing we do is deploy the jib, because we can remember the spinnaker, when it's leeward of the jib, it's depowered and you can control it. The spinnaker has a huge load on it, and if it's not leeward and sheltered and a lee of the jib, then it's got power in it, and it's just a pain in the butt to try and manhandle that thing down. So the first thing we do is deploy the jib. You pull up the jib. That's your job, because we're on. We want to douse it on the port side. So we're going to want to be on a starboard tack. And so you're going to pull out the jib, and it's going to be out here. And then as soon as you've pulled out the jib, the next thing you do is you will grab a hold of your line. Not this line. You grab a hold of this line out here, the one that's flying. So remember, the clue is floating in the midair out here, right? You're going to grab a hold of the line somewhere out here, grab a hold of that, and pull it towards you until the clue gets close to you. And then you're going to grab the clue and you're going to pull that towards you. And you're going to get the entire foot of the sail. So you're just going to be there pulling on the foot of the sail until you get to the other clue, right? And as you're pulling that in, you're not worrying about it. You're just making a mess behind you. You are tailing the spinnaker's sail itself. He's just making a mess behind him. He doesn't care about that. That's your job.
Throwing it in the cabin.
You can put it in the cabin, yep. So you're just pulling that in until you've got the whole foot, until you get to the other end of the foot, the other clue essentially, right? And when you're pretty close to that clue, you're gonna tell me, I have the foot. And this shit is so loud, you gotta yell. And again, you could be dealing with someone who's partially deaf like me, but even if you're not, it's just really loud. The sail is going, there's a lot of wind. So you say, I have the foot, and at that point, I'm free to drop the halyard. So now, I start dropping the halyard, and the whole thing just falls down on you. And you are grabbing it in huge handfuls, and just like this. And you're just pulling it in, and all you're doing is you're guiding it this way. He will tail the entire mess into the cabin behind you. You're just trying to get it to stay out of the water. And I'm dropping this as fast as you can pull it. And this being the spin halyard, which I have access to on this side. And then it's in, and the tiller, the guy on the tiller, the driver, is rounding the starting line, and now we're beating up wind again. And then you guys are going to be jibing, and you're going to be steering, and I'm going to be up here making sure everything's back in the position so that we can use the spinnaker again. I've got a lot of time to do this. We're going to beat all the way upwind, so I have a lot of time, but I'm going to make sure that the pole is the way it was when we started. You know, when we went over, is the pole where it's supposed to be? I'm going to do that again, make sure it's all good, and when I feel like the pole is set up for the next deployment, hoisting of the spin, then I will come back and join you, and we'll just do our upwind. And that's that. Easy.